Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and welcome to today's video, which is going to be a very fun reading vlog. Lexi from Books with Lexie reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to take part in her booktuber taste test video series, which is such a fun vlog series she does where she picks a booktuber and they basically swap book recommendations in order to find out how similar their tastes are. So she asked if I wanted to do it and I obviously said yes. So I am going to be reading 4 books in this video. 3 of them are recommendations from Lexi herself. 1 of them is a buddy read. And by the end of it, I will be able to compare my ratings of these books with Lexi's ratings and we'll be able to find out, do we have similar reading tastes or not? It's just a very fun concept. Before we get into the books themselves that I'll be reading, let's just talk a little bit about Lexi and our reading tastes. First of all, I love Lexi's channel. I think that goes without saying, but if you're not already subscribed to Lexi and haven't watched any of her videos before, please go check them out. She is so sweet. She is so creative with her reading vlog and readathon ideas. She does a ton of sprints. It's just a very fun time over there. I would say we have pretty close reading tastes when it comes to genres of books. She definitely lives in the mystery, thriller, horror, sci-fi realm. She definitely leads a bit more into the horror genre than I do. She also experiments a little bit more with fantasy and romantasy, but we end up picking up a lot of the same books throughout the year in my opinion. As far as the books that I will be reading for this video, as of now, I only know what one of them is. The buddy read book that we've selected is The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace. This is a psychological thriller that maybe has some sci-fi in it. The top of the synopsis says Dark Matter meets Girl Interrupted in this gripping psychological thriller about a young woman teetering on the edge of reality. So that sounds super up my alley. Obviously I picked this book up on my own accord, so I think I have a good chance of enjoying it. But this will be kind of a wild card because neither of us know what we're going to think about it or what the other person is going to think about it. The other 3 books for this video though, I don't know what they are yet. So I need to pull up Lexi's video that she sent me with the 3 books that she's recommending me to read. Here's the thing with these 3 books. 2 of them are going to be books that she has rated highly and 1 of them is going to be a book that she didn't like and she rated lower. And I mean, the ideal scenario I guess would be for me to read these books and agree with her ratings, but obviously that doesn't always happen. And if you are not new to my channel, then you know that I don't really have a problem with people disagreeing about books that I either enjoy or don't enjoy. I think there's a book out there for everyone. I think not every book is for every reader, and I'm more than happy to discuss differences in opinions, but I'll be very curious to see where Lexi and my reading tastes land. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up her video that she sent me and we're gonna find out what other 3 books I will be reading.
Hi Jordan, thank you so much for agreeing to do this collab with me. I am personally so excited. You have been somebody that I've wanted to do an episode in this series with for a while, but I've been a little scared. As you know, I have read some of your recs, but I don't think you've read any of mine. So I'm so curious to see how this goes. I know for a fact that sometimes we completely line up. I was looking at some of your all-time favorite books, I think, and we had a lot of overlap in certain categories, so I think it'll be fun to kind of test this out and see how it goes. So I have 3 books for you to read. 2 I loved, 1 I did not. I have a 5-star, a 4.5 star, and a 1 star in this list. So I'm excited to see if this is payback and you hate my favorites. I did try to pick 3 that I thought that you could like certain aspects of all of them, but we will see. So first up is Jackal by Erin E. Adams. This is a blend of mystery thriller with some horror in it. We are following a main character who is going back to her racist hometown for her best friend's wedding. She gets there and she realizes that there is a string of missing young black girls and she decides to investigate it. She feels like she owes it to them and things maybe get a little weird from there. Next up is Whalefall by Daniel Kraus. This is a sci-fi horror. I've seen people say that it's just sci-fi and I have been to an event where it was a horror event and this author was there, so do with that what you will. This is a story of grief. Our main character loses his father. I believe it's scuba diving that his father is super into, and he decides to honor his father. He's going to go on one last mission. Here's the thing, he does this and then ends up in a whale. So that is the second book, and the third one is The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Fracassi. This is a sci-fi, a little bit of a thriller, mostly sci-fi. This author does write horror as well, but this is following this couple who is working on a time machine, and they have specific rules that they have to follow and different things within that. So I hope you at least enjoy one of these. In theory, I'd love for you to love the two I love, and then, well, I don't want you to dislike a book, but like that is maybe the point of this, to see if you also dislike the same things. I feel like this is a good mix of things you already read, but maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone, and I cannot wait to see your thoughts. Thank you so much again for doing this collab with me. I'm so excited, and you know, even if we have completely opposite tastes, which sometimes we absolutely do, I still cannot wait to watch your vlog.
Okay, I am so excited about this. I didn't really have any predictions. As Lexi mentioned, I have recommended her a couple of books that she has read in vlogs in the past, and I've never done that formally. I mean, I've definitely picked up books on Lexi's recommendation. I just haven't called it that, or I haven't specifically, you know, featured it in a vlog because of her. So because of that, I haven't thought too hard about what books Lexi would recommend me. I was hoping she would give me some books that leaned into the horror genre a little bit. I mean, I didn't want to get too crazy, but I love what she picked for me. It sounds like, honestly, I could enjoy all three of them. The first two she mentioned, Jackal and Whalefall, I have definitely heard of those books, and they have definitely been on my radar as books that I would like to pick up someday. I don't own either of them, but I am more than happy to seek them out and pick them up, because I think there's a good chance I'll like both of them. The third one though, I've never even heard of, and I don't think I've seen her talk about it on her channel. So that is a total wild card. I mean, just based on the title and her little description of it, it also sounds like a book I could really enjoy. So I'm so excited about that. Off the bat, I do not know which one she didn't enjoy. I don't specifically remember her talking about any of these books on her channel, so it will be a total guess as to which two she loved and which one she gave 1 star. Wow, 1 star is such a bad rating. I also didn't talk about that yet. I think the one I gave her that I didn't like, I only gave 2 stars, but wow, she really hated one of these books. So I'm so excited to guess which one that is. But I will be back with my first reading update once I have it, and we'll get this fun reading vlog on the way. All right, I have my first reading update. I decided to pop on because I have been listening to the audiobook of Jackal, and I'm excited to give you kind of an introductory update on this book because it's been a very interesting ride so far. I did not re-look at the synopsis of this book before starting it. I just jumped right in, so I didn't really know totally what to expect, and it took me a little bit of time to really grasp on to the plot of this book. And that's because it does follow various perspectives throughout the book, and it jumps around in timeline a lot, but there is one main perspective that we spend the bulk of our time following, and that is the perspective of our main character named Liz. And at the start of the book, she is coming back to her hometown because her best friend is getting married, and while she's at the wedding of her best friend, she is watching over, I think it's the daughter of the bride, but it's like a preteen or young teenage girl that she's kind of keeping an eye on, and she ends up losing track of her, and this young girl then disappears. And so that sets off a whole chain of events. Obviously police are called, search parties are started, but this girl is missing, and it's kind of our main character's fault. But what's interesting about the story is that this is not the first, you know, preteen or teenage girl that has gone missing in this town, and our main character is starting to realize that, and she's starting to piece some things together about the history of this town. Our main character is a Black woman, the girl who she was watching who went missing was a Black girl, and all of the girls that have gone missing in history have been young Black girls. And that's notable because the town that these people live in, I think it's in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania, but it's a predominantly white town. And there's a big disparity in wealth, in privilege, and basically the class of the people who live in this town. So our main character is finding out that the white people don't really care about this pattern of all the missing girls in this town's history. And then the other perspectives throughout the book that we've been getting have been, as far as I can tell, basically flashback chapters to the scenes of these other girls also going missing. And it's interesting because some of the girls have never been found, some of the girls were found alive, and some of the girls have been found dead. So there's the pattern of the disappearing girls, but there's not necessarily a pattern as to what happens to them. So I'm very interested to find out more about what exactly is going on here. I have to say, in general, I'm really intrigued and invested in this story so far. I'm enjoying the audiobook, and even though it took me a little while to kind of latch onto what was happening, I feel like I'm in it now, and I'm really hoping that we do get answers by the end of the book. I could see this being the type of story to leave a little bit ambiguous at the end, or to potentially leave some things unanswered. So that's what I'm personally hoping doesn't happen, but we will see. So far, things are going well, and not only am I interested in finding out the ending of this book, but I'm interested to find out what my final thoughts are, what my rating is, and how that compares to Lexi. That's like the lingering thing in the back of my head throughout reading this book, and what I'm guessing will last through the whole video. And reading all the books is that I will always kind of be wondering if these books are the ones that Lexi loved or ones she didn't like, and if I'm gonna match that. But all right, I'll be back with my next reading update once I have it. Okay, I've got my first update. Well, I think it's actually my second update, but I have finished my first book for this video, and I'm excited to chat with you about it. I finished Jackal, and I think I already gave you the gist of this book. And I was really curious to get to the end of this book because I wanted to see, obviously, how the ending played out, but really because I wanted to see how different this book would be from other mystery thriller / horror books. Because as I'm sure I explained, the initial premise of this book is not anything groundbreaking in my opinion. Like, solving the mystery of a series of missing girls is not a super unique premise. I've definitely read that in multiple mystery thriller books before. But let me just say that where this book goes is completely unlike anything else that I've read before. It definitely does toe the line between thriller and horror because it does introduce some potentially supernatural elements of the book, and that's something that I'm sure is polarizing. I mean, I've seen the average reviews or the average rating for this book. It's not super high, and I think that's why, because the ending of this book kind of goes off the rails. It kind of lost me a little bit in terms of understanding. But even if that wasn't my perfect ending to the book, I can't help but respect that it tried to do something different. So I don't know, if you're the type of reader who reads a lot of basic mystery thrillers, and like A Series of Missing Girls sounds like a book that you would tend to pick up, but you're open to something a little bit different, I do think this was a fun ride to go on because I truly didn't know what to expect. Like, I didn't know where we were going, and I like being kept guessing in a thriller horror book, and this definitely did that. On top of that, what I also appreciate about this book is something that I was already kind of getting a glimpse of towards the beginning. It's that this book had something to say. And if you've watched my channel for a while, then you probably know that I love books that have something to say. I love books with social commentary. I love books with some sort of message to them. Obviously, usually I prefer books that I align with the messaging on, but overarchingly, I would say I can respect and appreciate an author who has something to say with their book beyond just being entertainment. Not that books have to be more than entertainment. I just personally like when books have a deeper message and an intention with what they're trying to get across to the reader. So this book definitely did that. And of course it's related to race and class, and the fact that these missing girls are all young Black girls, and the fact that nobody else in the town seems to care about them. Not only the white people in the town, but even the Black people in the town who haven't had this directly affect them. Like, our main character kind of goes through this realization that she didn't even care about the news of other missing girls. I mean, she would care on a surface level, but she wouldn't go to such lengths to figure out what was going on. Like, she wouldn't investigate it herself until she was directly involved. And I think that's really, really interesting commentary. That's absolutely something that I see prevalent in the world today, is that a lot of people don't seem to care about a lot of issues unless it directly affects them or their family. I personally find that to be a problem. I wish that there was a little bit more empathy extended beyond just people's immediate families, and sometimes not even then. But I feel like this book really reflected that message, and I really enjoyed that message. So I am going to give this book 4 stars. I really didn't know where it was gonna land as we were getting into the ending of this book. I was like, okay, is this book gonna land the ship or am I gonna be totally lost? And while it didn't land in a way that I would consider it a 5-star book, it is a really strong 4-star book for me. So I'm really glad I read it. I'm really glad that Lexi told me to read it. I'm guessing she probably saw this on my want to read shelf on Goodreads. And I'm very curious to see if Lexi did love this book or did not love this book. I can see it going either way. I'm not sure if I read this book first, if it's one that I would really recommend to Lexi. Honestly, probably not. So I don't know, am I predicting this as the one she didn't like? I don't think I'm saying that either. I don't know. I will check all of her ratings of these books at the end so that I don't, you know, preemptively spoil myself by finding the book that she didn't like. But I guess I will tentatively guess that she did love this one, that she's also going against the grain of the low average rating of this book, and that we're aligned in our tastes on this book, but we will see. My plan next is to go into the 3rd rule of time travel, I think is the title of the book. I went ahead and got the audiobook of this one on Everand, and I've just barely started it. I do not have the ability to give you the synopsis yet. To be honest, it kind of jumped right into the action, so I feel like I might have to restart the book and really get my brain focused, because this one definitely is more of a straightforward sci-fi book, which I love and I'm very excited about, but I do need to focus to make sure I'm trying to understand what's going on so I can follow the storyline. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and restart that book, but I will be back with my next update on it whenever I have something else to say. Okay, I've got quite the update. I have finished the 3rd rule of time travel, so I'm going to chat with you about that, and I've also started the next book. But let's talk about the 3rd rule of time travel by, let me remind myself who it's by. Okay, by Philip Fracassi. I have not read from this author before, but it does look like he has at least one other book that is fairly popular. I've had a few friends review and enjoy Boys in the Valley. That one looks more like a horror book. Whereas the 3rd rule of time travel is definitely firmly science fiction. This follows our main character, who is a woman who is a scientist, and her scientist husband have created time travel, or created a time travel machine. And at the time that we're jumping into the story, this machine is not super robust. They're still testing it, but they have gone through enough tests that our main character knows what to expect when it comes to the time travel. So much so that they have created 3 rules related to the time travel. Rule 1 is that travel can only occur to a point within your lifetime, meaning you go back to one of your own memories. So it's not like future time travel, and it's also not time travel to way in the past before you were born. Basically, a person just travels to a previous point in their own life. Rule 2 is that you can only travel for 90 seconds. And rule 3 is that you can only observe. So you can't change the past, you can't interact with any of the people that you see, you just watch back 90 seconds of some point in your life. And also, I guess not one of their 3 rules, but one of the things we learn is that these characters don't get to choose which point they go back to. A lot of this book actually reminds me a bit of The Memory Collectors by Deep Meserve, which is a book I just read for my most recent Aardvark reading vlog. I did really enjoy that one. I gave it 4 stars, so go check that out if you like sci-fi time travel-y books. Okay, but the 3rd rule of time travel, given that premise, it sounds so up my alley. That is a me book through and through. So I was excited to get into it, but the beginning of this book is very clunky. It was really hard for me to get invested in this book because while we do learn a little bit about this main character's life, you know, she had this scientist husband that she invented this time travel machine with. We learn that something happened to him in the fairly recent past. We learn that she has a daughter, but we more are just thrown into like the logistics of the time travel, and it's done in this clunky way where at the beginning of the book there's this reporter that's coming to interview our main character, and she's telling the reporter all of the rules of time travel, how this time machine works. And it was just a very like flat feeling info dump about how the time travel worked, and very logistical heavy in that like it was really trying to explain the science and really trying to explain how this machine does not create paradoxes. That's a big thing within time travel books and just the concept of time travel in general. Like, how are you going to address if characters go back in time? What if they influence something that causes this ripple effect? Like the example always given is, what if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, which then means that obviously you would never be born, which means you would never go back in time. So it creates a big paradox that causes the logic of time travel to crumble pretty quickly. So a lot of sci-fi books, time travel books, will build into their story some sort of way that they either bypass that paradox. Sometimes you just have to suspend your disbelief and, you know, go with the fact that that paradox doesn't exist, or sometimes that paradox is kind of played with within the story. But this book, like I said, just really tried to over-explain the science to make us understand, don't worry, that paradox won't happen. And part of that does come back into play within the story, but also it just made me feel very like, okay, I get it right at the beginning. Like, can we get into the characters and the story and the plot? Because even as a person who does like to read about science in sci-fi books, and I like to hear the logic behind it, I like the explanations, I'm okay with science heavy sci-fi books. This just like dove right into that in a way that was just a little bit off-putting to me personally. The other thing I was gonna say about having that reporter as an early character in the book is that it was just done in a way that was very, like, the reporter was asking the perfect question at the perfect time to allow our main character to continue explaining what she wanted to explain. And that felt, I don't know, a little bit lazy, a little bit convenient. So I didn't love the intro of this book. However, eventually the plot did get going, and that's the part that I definitely latched onto. There are some interesting things that happen within like the middle chunk of the book that were really interesting. It also got more emotional than I was expecting. There are some triggers in this book that I would recommend looking into if you have triggers around motherhood, trying to become a mother, loss of pregnancies or young children. So anything related to that, feel free to message me and I can give you more details, or just look into trigger warnings. But it definitely gets emotional based on what this character gets into with some of her trips back to the past. So as that sounds, by the halfway point, I was definitely much more invested in this story, and I was really excited to see how everything would play out. This was a very quick book to listen to. I listened to the audio and it felt like it went by really quickly, because about as soon as I got to that midway point of feeling like really invested and interested in the story, we got to the end. And the ending of this book was also a little strange. We had a similar info dump section and it got a little bit, I don't know, like cheesy with having like a very clear villain in the story and having them explain their side, and then having the good guys like revolt against this bad guy. I don't know. Then it tried to like wrap it up in another kind of emotional bow, and I was kind of checked out again at that point. So I don't know, my thoughts on this book are just kind of all over the place. Overall, I did enjoy it, and I do think it brought up some interesting points related to time travel. I did come to really enjoy this main character and I was rooting for her, but I just feel like the explanations of the time travel and the explanations of like the resolution of the book were just a little too dry and info dumpy. I don't know, I would have preferred that to be edited and rewritten a little bit differently, but that's my own personal taste. But I think I'm gonna land at 3 stars for this book. I am glad that I read it. It's totally up my alley, like I said at the beginning. Pretty much any book with this sort of premise to it, I would be willing to give a try. So I'm not mad that I read it. It's definitely not my favorite time travel type of book that I've read though. So with a 3-star rating, that definitely means that I'm gonna be differing from Lexie's thoughts. So we will just have to see how we differ on that one. Very interested to get to Whalefall, which is the 3rd recommendation that Lexie gave to me specifically. But before that, I did decide to go ahead and dive into our buddy read book. So I have started The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace, and whoa, this one is a weird one. I'm only about 25% of the way into this book so far. All I really knew going into it was that it is another sci-fi book. I'm sure I read the description at some point, like when I chose it from Aardvark. I'm sure I heard the synopsis and I obviously determined that it was a book I was interested in. But before diving back into this book, I didn't refresh myself on what it was about. And this is a little bit confusing of a book to just jump into without knowing anything about it, because we jump into this book and we are in the past. We're in 1954, I think is the year, and we're following our main character who wakes up on a bus and discovers that she is being transported to a mental institution. And she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know why she's on this bus or why she's going to this location, but she's adamant that she shouldn't be there. So she's like arguing with the other people on the bus with her. When she gets to the mental hospital, she's arguing with the staff saying like, I'm not supposed to be here, this isn't right. And they're asking her like, okay, who are you then if you're not this patient that we think you are? And she can't answer that question. So obviously that all plays into the idea that she is mentally unstable and she is the patient that they think she is. And then we see that kind of play out where she is being kept in this mental hospital and she's talking with, you know, the experts and the staff, and she's being treated. In that first chunk of this book, I was like, okay, is this not sci-fi? Was I incorrect? Is this just historical fiction following a woman in a mental institution? Is this a Lena book? I thought maybe I had it wrong, but then something happens where all of a sudden our main character feels this weird vibrational feeling and she gets flashed into this other location, and she wakes up and she's in a lab and she's surrounded by people that she again doesn't recognize, who are telling her that she's back in the future and they just sent her in the past as a time traveler and she's on this secret mission or whatever, but she's only in that period for a very short time before she gets sent back to the past. So at the point that I'm at in the book, she's done that a couple times, and it's unclear to our main character and also unclear to me as the reader, like what the real situation is. I'm not clear on the identity of our main character. She's very much not clear on the identity of herself. We're not sure if she's truly crazy and schizophrenic as they are telling her she is, because that kind of makes sense with those hallucinations she's having, or if she is from the future. I think they said the year like 2030 something, 2037 or something like that. I'm inclined to believe the second, that she is a time traveler. But this book is doing a pretty good job of making me feel like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who to trust. I don't know if we can trust this main character's brain. And I'm not sure where the book is going to go from here. I still have a lot of the book left to go. And we'll see if it clears up a little bit or if it stays in that like confusing, kind of frantic feeling sort of tone where I just don't know who to trust, who to believe, what to think, and where we're going. But yeah, that's where I'm at, I guess. I'm enjoying it. Like, I do want to find out who she is and why she's being ripped between these two timelines and realities, but we'll see. I think personally I will want some answers sooner than later, and I'll want something to root for. Like right now I don't feel like I'm rooting for the main character because she has no objective, or she has no clear objective of what she's actually trying to do. She's just trying to figure things out. So the plan is for me to finish this book. I'll come back with my full thoughts on it, and then we'll be down to the last book for this video. Okay, got my next update. I have finished The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace. And let's see, where do I want to start? Let's start with the good news, which is that reading this as a buddy read and chatting to Lexi about it was fun. We did go ahead and separate it into roughly 11 chapter sections because there's, I think, 55 chapters in the book. So we gave ourselves about 5 days to finish it, and we would check in about once a day with how far we made it and what our thoughts are, or what our thoughts were on those little sections. And this was a bit of a roller coaster in that as I started it, I was a little confused and a little bored with where it started, because I guess my overall thoughts are that this book was kind of confused, or I felt like it was confused about what it was, because it started off very historical fiction heavy. And I feel like I could have liked the storyline and the discussions it was trying to have related to like body autonomy for women in history. This specifically takes place within the 50s. And there is a lot of discussion in here about like women's ownership over their bodies and their ability to make decisions about their bodies, especially if and when deemed mentally impaired, and what decisions they're allowed to make or their husbands are allowed to make. That was all interesting, but I was so confused through those portions of the book because I was waiting for the book to turn sci-fi, and it took a really long time to get into the actual sci-fi portion of the book that it felt a little misleading, and like it did a disservice to us as the readers to pitch it as a sci-fi book first when it took so long to get to the sci-fi that I didn't even appreciate the historical fiction parts of it. And then once we got to the sci-fi portions, it's like we got little teasy moments of it throughout the first half, and then all of a sudden you hit a chapter, I think it's like chapter 38 or something, so very well into the book, where you just get info dumped everything that makes this book sci-fi. And at that point, I was feeling like I also could have enjoyed a sci-fi book about that premise, but the book should have started with that if it wanted to lead as a sci-fi book and get me invested in that storyline. So I don't know, we were just kind of all over the place in our discussion of this book, and I know Lexi in particular was considering DNFing the book multiple times, but then every time she would want to DNF it, she would finally get to a chapter that had more of the sci-fi elements to it, and she would be kind of re-engaged, but then it would switch back to the historical parts, and it just, I don't know, it kind of lost us. I also said to Lexi, after we wrapped up the book, we had some discussions on some of the specific plot points and like where the book went. And at the end, I messaged her and was like, I'm pretty sure this is a 2-star book for me. Like on paper, there were just enough intriguing elements for it to be beyond a 1-star. But honestly, I don't have much good to say about the book other than that. But I also don't know if in good conscience, I can give more than 1 star to a book that uttered the line, a little missionary for the mission, as the main character was contemplating having sex with one of the men that she became friends with and was working with throughout the book. Like, what was that line? What was that section of the book? I just don't understand what this book was doing, what it was trying to do, who this is for. Like, I don't think I can pitch this to historical fiction readers because I don't think they will like kind of the sci-fi twists and where the book goes later on. But I also definitely can't recommend this to strong sci-fi readers because I think they will have more of the reaction that Lexi and I had, which is that the historical fiction portion dominated the first part of the book too much. Even as someone who does appreciate historical fiction sometimes, it distracted from the points the author was trying to make and the sci-fi storyline that I think she was going for. So it really didn't work for me. I do think I'm gonna give it 2 stars. I'll be a little generous despite that missionary line. Not a book that I will recommend very widely going forward. Honestly, probably not a book that I'll remember very much going forward because the 2 halves of the book, I feel like I have so many other books I would recommend that do each of those parts better. So I think this one is just gonna kind of fade into oblivion. So that is a bummer, but with that, I am going to continue on. I have one more book to read in this video. It is Whalefall. I just got the notification that the audiobook is ready for me on Libby, so perfect timing. I'm ready to cruise through that book. I probably will go ahead and do that and just check in with you once I finished it, pitch the book a little bit, talk about my final thoughts, talk about what I think Lexi thought of that book, and then we'll do one more kind of final wrap up to talk about all of the books that I've read, rethink any of the predictions that I made regarding Lexi's ratings, and then I will actually look up Lexi's ratings of each of these books here at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. We're gonna get into it and I'll be back with my next and final update when I have it. Okay, my friends, the time has come to give you my final update and wrap up this video. I did go ahead and finish Whalefall, and this book is both exactly what I was expecting and not at all what I was expecting. The pitch of this book is that we're following our main character named Jay, and he's a man who is a diver, like a deep sea diver, and his father was also a deep sea diver. And his father at the start of the book recently has passed away, but Jay had a really difficult relationship with his father, and so his grief is really complicated. And so in this book, he's going on this deep sea dive in order to find the remains of his father. And like, we know that's kind of a long shot situation, and I think he also knows that's kind of a long shot situation, but it's kind of an act of desperation and a way for him to try to find closure. And so during this dive, he gets swallowed by a whale, which is like the most ridiculous premise to include in a book, but this book is super not silly. This book is very, very serious. And I think it's commonly categorized as grief horror because it's just as much about like the horror of being swallowed by a whale and his path to escaping as it is about his grief of his father. And we get a ton of flashbacks to Jay's life growing up with his father, how much pressure his father put on him and why his relationship was so strained with him, as well as with the other members of his family. And I don't know what the breakdown is, like if it's a perfect 50-50 split. I will say the first quarter of the book is all like not inside the whale, and then the last 75% it's split between his time trying to escape the whale and all of the flashbacks to understand more about Jay's life. My enjoyment of this book was also like 50-50. I just happened to enjoy the parts of the story where he was inside the whale trying to escape. I have absolutely no idea if the anatomy of this whale is correct and if any of this is feasible to happen. I do feel like I'm going to go on a bit of a spiral and a deep dive into this book afterwards to learn a little bit more about who this author is and how he wrote this book, because I really liked the parts where he was problem solving and he like could figure out where he was inside the whale and use his knowledge of whale anatomy and just sea life in general to help himself escape. Whereas the parts with the flashbacks and learning about the relationship of Jay with his family members, that all resonated with me a lot less. And I am someone who I've never really connected very deeply to grief horror. And I kind of wish that I did, because I know a lot of people love it and it seems so meaningful to so many people. However, in saying that, like the way to connect more with grief horror would be to go through more grief and to have experienced more loss. That would allow me to relate more with the characters. And obviously I don't want that. Like, knock on wood, I'm not wishing loss upon myself. But there's always just been this disconnect because I haven't experienced the death of a parent. I haven't experienced the death of an immediate family member or anyone that I would consider super close to me. Luckily, but unfortunately, I don't relate to that in books as much, but I can totally see how this would be so meaningful and impactful to the right reader. It reminded me a lot of Sharkheart, which is another book that a lot of people absolutely loved that I just didn't connect with. That one actually has a very similar, super out there kind of sci-fi premise. That's more of a metaphor and a way to explore the concepts of grief and terminal illnesses. It also kind of verges on like We Spread by Ian Reid. That one is kind of about the topic of dementia and again grief. But this one, yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like I appreciated what it was doing and I was invested the whole time I was listening to it. I just didn't super deeply connect to it. And the interesting parts of the escaping from the inside of a whale did not supersede the more like mediocre feelings and connection I had to the rest of the book. So I think I am landing at 3 stars for this book, which means in this video, what did I have? A 3-star book in Whalefall, a 2-star book in The Once and Future Me, a 3-star book in The Third Rule of Time Travel, and a 4-star book in Jackal. And now comes the time for me to give my final prediction, or what I think Lexi rated these books. I think she also appreciates when a book has something to say. So I'm predicting that Jackal and Whalefall were her 2 super highly rated books. I think she gave one of them 5 stars and one of them 4.5. I'm thinking maybe Whalefall 5, Jackal 4.5, and then she gave one book 1 star, and I'm guessing it's The Third Rule of Time Travel, but I'm not 100% confident. And then in speaking with Lexi, I do think I know her rating of The Once and Future Me, but I am going to go ahead and check her ratings for all of them right now. The good news is I haven't been spoiled for any of this. Even as I've been looking at reviews for some of these books on Goodreads, I am a Goodreads user. Lexi is a Storygraph user. So all of her ratings for these books are on Storygraph. So I have not accidentally stumbled upon any of them, but it is time to look them up. Okay, how do I search her books? Let's first search for Jackal. Okay, Lexi gave Jackal 5 stars. So I wasn't quite right. I thought that was the 4.5 star one, but I was correct that she did really love that book. And then let's look up Whalefall. Whalefall's the 1 star. I did not see that coming. Okay, I'm gonna have to talk to Lexi about this to understand what made her give it 1 star. That is crazy. I wonder if she's read those other books that I mentioned. Shark Heart, no, it doesn't look like it. And We Spread. She gave that one 3 stars. Okay, so maybe grief horror is also not Lexi's thing. But that means she gave The Third Rule of Time Travel 4.5 stars. Interesting. Sorry for everything I said about not loving that book. And then The Once and Future Me, she has not rated it yet on Storygraph, but I do think she's giving that book 2 stars. Very interesting. We did not quite align with our thoughts, but also I didn't have very polarized or drastic thoughts on any of these books to begin with. So like we couldn't have aligned on the 5 star or the 1 star because I didn't give any of the books 5 star or 1 star. But I am a little surprised to look into the results and compare to what I thought she rated these books, but that is the fun of this challenge. So I think that is about all that I have for this video. Please let me know all of your thoughts that you had while watching this. What did you think I was going to think of these books? Did you think Lexi and I were going to align in our thoughts and our ratings? Have you read any of these books that I mentioned in this video? Or did I convince you to pick any of them up or potentially take them off of your TBR? Let me know. Thank you so much one more time to Lexi for inviting me to do this video. It was an absolute blast. And other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.